Thank you. And very warm welcome to the last event hosted by Intent at Davos this year, which we named Strategic Compass for Navigating Complex News Environments. We're delighted to have you here today and that you have decided to spend your afternoon with us. It's our 6th year consecutive holding an event here, and we're always very happy to be here. There's always an abundance of topics that we want to talk about. But this year we have chosen something that's been a very prominent discussion this year during Davos, and that's misinformation and the concept of trust in general. So just to begin with a couple of housekeeping rules. As a run-off show, we're gonna start with 2 introductory presentations that are gonna be followed by a panel discussion straight after. So please think of some questions if you have any and keep them till the end. So we're going to have a Q&A afterwards, and after all the business is done, we can proceed to networking drinks and discussing further. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Lukasz Bochenek, who's the CEO of Leidar, and who will begin with the first presentation. Lukasz, please.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Alex, and thank you all for joining us. It's always great to see the full room. So basically, the run of this show, as Alexandra said, I will go through very quickly through some research and from reflections that we were doing about the AI and the information and how it impacts also companies and corporate strategies. And then I'm really happy to have Michelle here from the European Broadcasting Union, who will share some of their research on the AI agents and how they are treating the news channels. We'll be also having perspectives from Sarah from IMD and from Greg from Global South Korea Federation. So covering different aspects of the news and AI, looking at the business aspects, looking also at the, let's say, subjects that are very close to us, like the health of the individuals, and on the news and journalism. I will introduce the panelists properly when I call them to the scene. So, really quickly, we wanted to see a little bit how the discourse is evolving right now around the AI and the AI adoption across the globe. And what we are seeing is that we are seeing this rapid acceleration, obviously, of adoption of AI in different lines of business, but at the same time, we wanted to see how actually discourse is being seen at 2 levels. So on one hand, the regulatory and governmental discourse, and on the other hand, the general discourse that you can see on the social media and digital channels. And what we are seeing actually is quite a big discrepancy. So we thought it would be quite interesting to see, let's say, the negative attributes in the media and social media discourse related to AI, so AI fatigue, AI saturation, and people who are basically critical towards the discourse and the omnipresence of AI in any corporate aspect. And we saw that it generated over 9 billion mentions in the reach in the last 3 months. So we are seeing a little bit that shift of the discourse at the, let's say, general population level, going from very enthusiastic and positive adoption and excitement to a certain level of fatigue and skepticism. And it's interesting to see also how the regulators and legislators in respective jurisdictions are reacting to that. And it will be really interesting because to a certain degree one can see that we are at the tipping point where AI can be really transformative and useful for business. On the other hand, there is this level of skepticism in the general population. And we see this, you can call it this gap between the corporate hype and citizen perception. And to a certain degree, one can be critical towards a certain way how the communication is being unfolding, because there is this idea that with anything related to AI, either we are ultra enthusiastic, either we are AI skepticism, and then we are the dinosaurs. And then there is this kind of conflict at middle there where the general perception is happening. So it's really interesting to see how that will be unfolding in the months to come. We're also seeing more and more mentions of the AI regulation in the general discourse and the need of the regulation towards the AI, and it doesn't come only from, let's say, the regular suspects. So we are seeing that across different types of the actors and stakeholders. And we will be probably seeing more of that moving forward, because there is, again, this tipping point moment where there is a need to bring certain levels of regulations. Then there is, from the corporate affairs perspective, the need for the smart regulations that are enabling the growth while protecting some of the core values that governments are protecting. We see also a certain level of concerns in the discourse. A lot of it is related to the feeling of distrust, also the uncertainty, and to a certain degree this anti-AI visibility. And again, it's about balancing this act and making sure that on one hand, the regulatory discourse and the discourse in general population meet at some point to really enable the growth that it can unleash. The anti-AI mentions, if you look at it in the overall statistics, they are not that high, but interestingly enough, we saw some spikes towards the end of the year. So again, we are seeing an interesting change and interesting shaping in the landscape. And that's what you would be seeing in the social media side of things. So we see that there is also the way how AI is shaping our news environments in the profession of corporate affairs, public affairs, and communication. And obviously, it does create a lot of opportunities. It does create opportunities to reach larger audiences, to be also faster, but also to bypass the channels of information. And the question of how you are managing that bypassing element becomes critical for our profession and for everyone working in that broader space. So we see this positive reaction from the newsroom perspective. So there is on one hand this digital provenance and having broader adoption of the digital first contents across the different channels and news platforms, and on the other hand the liquid content concept, so the content that is being created across the channels and is being used across the platforms in the media space. So what we also see that we are seeing that levels of trust towards technology and AI really varies depending on the jurisdiction, and to a certain degree one can claim that it's an event-driven phenomenon. On the other hand, you see that more and more broadly, and that kind of means that it's linked with the transnationalization of the influence and also with this idea of those highly polarized news environments. So these competing realities coexist, and the idea is really to ensure that the organizations get the most out of it. And here you have just a couple of examples of news and fake news, not necessarily news, which were both successfully and unsuccessfully used by companies and organizations. And what we've seen really at the beginning of this year quite a lot is this concept of authentic content and kind of guarantees of non-AI generation in the creative content. And we see that as a certain trend is not 100% visible, but it's something that gains more and more momentum among certain social groups. So from that perspective, the question, so what? We believe that there are a couple of elements for any organization. So the first one is definitely about enhancing the stakeholder base. And I think anyone working in the broad space of partnerships, corporate affairs, would agree with the idea that the definition of who stakeholder is needs to be broader, because whom we consider as the closer groups of stakeholders are actually more people that any organization is reaching. Then we see also this idea of monitoring continuously in order to anticipate trends. A lot of the trends that come as a surprise could have been seen using technology as the early signals. Then being targeted and very targeted, both in the message but also in the types of stakeholders with whom we are engaging. And also assuming that geopolitics, obviously everyone is talking about the geopolitics entering to the boardroom since a year. The reality is that, at least in our experience, geopolitics were always in the boardroom. They are just more visible and more talked about. And that allows to foresight both the known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And at the end of the day, it is all about source multiplication and the reach. So that's from the corporate perspective. And without further ado, I will give a floor to Michel Roverelli, who is Director of Member Relations and Communications at the European Broadcasting Union. And they did some fascinating study about AI news agents. So please, Michel.
Thank you, Lukasz, and hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Leidar for the invite. To be able to present this research. Now, just a very brief, maybe 1 minute or less, on the European Broadcasting Union, maybe better known to some of you as Eurovision. Our shareholders very simply, put it very simply, are public service broadcasters, public service media organizations across Europe and beyond in 56 countries. So the likes of the BBC, of France Télévisions, in Switzerland, of SRG, SSR, and so on. We do so much more than the song contest and the Eurovision Song Contest, which I'm sure you're all big fans of. No, I'm not going to give you tickets for the show in Vienna, but we do more than that. And this is an example of that, and I'm really pleased to be able to present this study that we did last year, News Integrity in AI Assistance. And it was a major undertaking involving hundreds of experts and professionals that worked on this study. And you'll see in a minute the very worrying results and the very worrying flaws that it pinpoint in the way AI assistants respond to questions about news. So in terms of scale and scope, it's important to say here that it was the largest study of its kind, involving 22 public service media organizations, 22 members of the EBU, in 18 countries, working across 14 languages. It was an investigation and it was a research that was done by my organization, the EBU, together with the BBC. So the BBC earlier last year had done this study, and that study was based only on the UK market. The findings were quite surprising, that it didn't take long for the EBU and the BBC then to partner and actually to say, well, let's do a multi-country version of it to really understand how wide the issue is. And so that's what we did. And hundreds of professionals, hundreds of journalists from 22 participating broadcasters asked the four biggest AI assistants that we all use, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and Perplexity, 30 core questions. Such as, who is the Pope? What is Ukraine's mineral deal? Can Trump run for a third term? And so on. Having been trained on BBC methodology, these hundreds of professionals evaluated more than 3,000 responses against key criteria, including accuracy, sourcing, context, distinguishing opinion from fact, and so on. The findings were disturbing. 45% of all the AI answers had at least one significant issue. 31 of the responses showed serious sourcing problems, missing, misleading, or incorrect attributions. 20% contained major accuracy issues, including hallucinated details and outdated information. Out of the 4 AI assistants that I mentioned, I must flag that Gemini performed the worst, with issues around mainly linked to sourcing. In 76% of its responses had issues, largely, as I said, due to poor sourcing. So clearly something needs to be done here. The world news industry is deeply concerned about these findings, and that's why in last year we launched an initiative called News Integrity in the Age of AI. We launched it together with the World Publishers Associations, which are not natural partners, let's say, of broadcasters, but this is a common issue. So it's important for us to form a united front. 5 key principles that base this code of practice. And again, I'll read them to you in a second, but this is super important because if we see the results of the latest Reuters News Institute report, here clearly we have a growing number of under 25 years old, and that number is growing very, very fast, that are using AI to find information. And we also know how much AI is increasingly replacing search functions in order to find that information. And again, if that means that, of course, we rely on these AI assistants to tell us, what to vote for, or again, if we need to be vaccinated or not. Of course, if they hallucinate or if things are out of context, then this is a major problem for society. So let me, again, read these out loud in terms of the 5 principles. One is no consent, no content. So news content must only be used in generative AI tools with the permission of the originator. Fair recognition. The value of timely quality news must be fairly recognized when it's used to benefit third parties. Accuracy and attribution. The original news source behind AI output must be apparent and accessible to users. Plurality and diversity. Harnessing the plurality of news media will deliver significant benefits for the news business in general and for AI-driven tools, so not only for us. Transparency and dialogue. So again, we urge tech companies to talk to news organizations such as ours, such as our members, to set safety, accuracy, and transparency set standards. You see a news website here on top of this slide. Again, if your organizations would like to endorse these principles, please go to the website. There is a section on this website where you could put your organization's name, and we have a lot of companies, institutions, UN partners that are supporting this framework, this code of practice, and these principles. And together with that, we have also launched a public advocacy campaign, which is facts in, facts out. As we say, the campaign has one simple demand: if facts go in, facts must come out. It's as simple as that. And that we're working and we're asking very much technology companies to work, for the truth, for reliable public value information and not against it. So again, that's something that you can join such a campaign on that website. So if you're interested in having a long weekend read around, again, the findings of the research in terms of the errors, the mistake, the patterns we found, but also, and we'll talk a bit about in the panel, of course, it's not only highlighting the evidence, but then what are we going to do about it? Then please, download the report and get back to me if you have further questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Quite a sobering, though it's a really nice weekend read. I highly recommend. I did read this one with a great interest. So we will now move to the panel. So I invite Sarah Toms, who is Chief Innovation Officer at IMD, to join us on stage, and Greg Perry, who is Director General of the Global Self-Care Federation, and also recipients of the Gold Merit Order of the Republic of Poland for supporting European integration. I'm Polish, so that's why I'm picking that up from Greg's bio. Thanks a lot. So,
that's the worst bit over, getting on the chair.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's maybe, that was quite a sobering study from Michelle and from EBU. But maybe let's start positively. So maybe to you, Sarah, and you're looking at different types of businesses, and obviously AMD works with a variety of types of the companies. So how do you see the AI really shaping the way businesses are thinking? Does it really shape in a different way the way how businesses are thinking about themselves and their strategies?
100%. So I think, like all of you, AI has become that term. It's sort of, taken all the oxygen out of the room. It's something, it doesn't matter if it's a leadership course, a course on sustainability, culture transformation, AI is coming up as a transversal subject across the board. And what's very interesting is, our faculty, me as Chief Innovation Officer, my role is to really provide as many tools and capabilities to faculty to bring generative AI business cases to life in the classroom. And what we were seeing even a year ago was AI didn't do a very good job. So a really great example is one of our faculty in supply chain, and he split his classroom up, executives in the supply chain field, one half just humans making decisions, given data, the other half given AI tools. And what we saw a year ago was that the humans outperformed the AI easily. And then fast forward 1 year later to this past September, and the humans did not. So the AI tools are getting better. And so it's something, I agree with the results of, what came out with the study, but what we really need to spend time with is being careful about the catch-allness of this term. AI is an enormous term the way food is an enormous term. Not all AI is created equally, and really the job we have at IMD at the moment is raising the level of sophistication and awareness, and also being able to tease out through critical thinking what makes good AI and what leads to the results that were just shared in this report.
Okay, and how do you see also it changes relationships within the companies? So do you see, this there is a lot we've seen in our research on digital of the fear of people, of fear of the workers, this need for reskilling, etc. So how does it change really the relationships between the companies and their employees?
Me again?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So again, being that we spend a lot of time developing leadership and leadership skills, there's a new field of study with our faculty where we're looking at the intersection of leadership skills development and AI. And a lot of our students are coming to us, and participants, they're asking, what does it mean if we now have AI at the table as a team member? We know more and more that executives are thinking about this, how we bring AI more into the business processes to help with not just productivity, but innovation and competitiveness and future readiness. And what one of our faculty has done really brilliantly, again, with us creating these generative AI labs, is seeing that there are differences when you have a team that doesn't know each other versus a team that knows each other really well when you have AI at the table. And there's also a difference when you have really simple tasks and simple decision-making versus really complex decisions. We have other faculty who are working with boards of directors, and we're saying, they're saying, don't look at necessarily the answers that AI is giving you, but look at the chain of thought reasoning. Are these the questions your board is asking? And maybe you can be using the chain of thought reasoning to actually, uncover some blind spots and some biases on your board. So this concept of really leadership development in an AI era is becoming more and more something that we're building into our classroom and our pedagogy, for sure.
And I guess, Michelle, that I will follow up a little bit on this one is because on this aspect of relationships, so how do you see the technology, the AI, changing the relationships between the audiences and the broadcasters or media organizations more in general?
I think it's really how we see really the relationship with the audience, in the sense that for us, we of course need to go where the audiences are. So again, it's about using AI in the most responsible and the best way to take us, where the audiences are. You might have heard the BBC announcing this week a major deal with YouTube that very much, announcing, 50 new channels on YouTube in the next year or so. So again, it's and using a lot of AI in that content creation. So for us, that relationship is a relationship that needs to continue to be a relationship of trust, where actually we use AI in the most responsible way. And again, how on the one hand, and creating a safe public value space for our audiences, but on the other hand is also how do we use AI to enhance our processes, to create more creative content, again, to go where the audiences are. So it is a way to bring us closer to our audiences.
So there is some grain in optimism here. So how do you see any good examples of how the public service media are using AI? You mentioned here the case of the BBC, but the others, how they are becoming closer to their audiences using the technology.
Well, I mean, it goes from admin, let's say, tasks, all the way to content creation, including, how you use it in better pooling resources, in, storytelling, in cross-border collaboration. So it is used as in any other industry, it is used massively and extensively. I think when we have a number of CEO coming from the media industries coming to us at DBU saying, could you give me good case studies in every sector of production or content creation where we can actually use AI? Well, that's not the case today. We are still very much experimenting, and the technology is moving so fast. But again, it is extensively used from the more admin tasks all the way to content creation.
Thank you. And, Greg, you are working probably in the most sensitive area that we can imagine, the health and the healthcare. And how do you see the change and the relationship with information that you are seeing from the customers and from the patients? And what is the role and magnitude of the misinformation that you need to deal with as an organization?
Thanks. I think in the health sector, it's probably one of the areas which is very heavily impacted, because I'm sure everybody in this room is using, or most of you will be using, some form of AI platform at some time to look at some health information. From the perspective that I come from, I represent the global self-care industry. And looking from the self-care perspective, this is really important, having proper information and not having misinformation. Because when we talk about self-care, it's about understanding our health. It's about looking at how to prevent disease ourselves. It's about treating ourselves, and it's about self-management in health. So a large area of health interventions are done like that. Most of these are through pharmacists. So if we're looking at tobacco cessation, oral health, men and women's personal and sexual health, we're looking at allergies, we're looking at skin care, we're looking at preventing skin cancer, we're looking at allergies, and we're looking at pain. All of those relate to self-care. And to make self-care very effective, you've got to empower the individual, empower us. And one form of empowerment, or the major form of empowerment, is through information and being very well health literate. And I think we're at a crossroads at the moment where, on the one hand, we've got amazing platforms and tools to do that. But on the other hand, because many are unregulated, there is a lot of misinformation. It's endangering empowerment because it's going the other way. I want to use one example, and that is paracetamol. And this isn't just through AI. So first, as a personal, someone I know, she told me she never takes paracetamol. I said, well, why? She says, well, I read that if you take paracetamol, you get liver cancer. I said, well, where'd you read that? He says, well, I saw it on the internet. And I said, well, Well, not if you use it appropriately. If you're going to have it when you have a headache or when you have certain pain, if you're going to use it every day, overdose yourself and use it continuously, you probably will. But that's not the way that you're supposed to use it. Didn't believe me, but anyway, takes ibuprofen and always has stomach problems because she doesn't eat beforehand, The other thing, I'll be very quick, of course, is also misinformation from people in authority who should know better. We've had this in paracetamol. And this was about the use of paracetamol in pregnant women and autism. I don't need to repeat where that came from, but what was good and where, in a sense, having access to information on the internet was a major response from all the health authorities and agencies and specialists and people dealing with autism and pharmacists. And we've just had a release now from the Lancet Commission showing that there is no evidence to that effect. So, we have new platforms that can be helpful. We have old platforms that can still be helpful. But it's all about ensuring that we have the right information.
Michelle?
No, Greg, I completely agree with you. And I think, we're talking a lot about misinformation, disinformation, but I think it goes beyond false information because, what we've just been saying is, AI companies really acting as intermediaries. So the way you find information, the way you source information, the kind of context it's in. So, for me, the challenges here are beyond the false information in the sense that you have a challenge around the invisible sourcing. So the journalism might be accurate, but you don't know the source. That's a huge problem for the media industry. That's a huge problem for trusted journalism because, again, you read something, but you don't know the source. The second, for me, it's a distorted context. So I read the piece of information, but I can't put it in a context. I don't know, and so I can't understand the information. And then I would say the third one is around unbalanced accountability. So again, journalism respond to public accountability and algorithms respond to the companies that have created them. And just to end, that is a huge challenge for our sector, especially for public media broadcasters, because it disconnects then the audience from, trusted news. And that's why we're in the business. We are in the business of trusted news. That's why you pay the license fee. That's why we get public funding. And so again, it's bigger than false information.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And following on this area of distorted context and the relationship. So, Greg, do you see a difference in which the health authorities and regulators interact with the industry, and what would be the trigger points? Would it be kind of the post-COVID/COVID societal change, or would that be more related with the technology, and how does it change really how your industry operates?
It's a good question, that combination of the COVID experience and the new technology. Before I go into that, I just like the sourcing is a really important point. And I think a lot of us who are in this room, we've all gone through an education of which, even if you're a scientist or a social scientist or a historian, sourcing. That's one of the major things. I think for a lot of people in general, they don't think, where's the source? They don't think like that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. So now how that relates to your question, I think, firstly, in the area of self-care, COVID, like for many areas, was a catalyst. I mean, in the end, you ended up self-testing. You've got vaccines which were easily available through a pharmacist, increased hand washing, masking, distancing. You had to look after yourself. And I think this has created quite a big shift, especially if most of us here, I think, are from the North or the Western Hemisphere. This was quite dramatic for us. Not so much if you'd been in Africa or Asia where they had, more accustomed to looking after yourself or self-testing, but it was massive. Now, if you combine that with the technology that's happened, you're in a completely different situation than we were in COVID. And I can remember, as it's only about 3 or 4 years ago, previously when I was working in the innovative industry, we were looking at strategies. And one year, there was no mention of AI. Nothing. It wasn't even on the agenda. The next year, shoots right up to the very top. You know, how are we going to introduce AI into our strategy? So I think it's the combination of the two that, from our perspective, is really very important. I think, and I come to the point that was mentioned before, AI means many different things, yeah? From just trying to find out some facts to creativity to what. And of course, AI is being used everywhere, but in different ways. Yeah, from basically, you know, taking minutes to helping in new innovation. So it is dramatic in this sector. And the big issue, I think, from the regulatory side is everyone wants to use AI because it's going to help facilitate the speed in which we can get assessments. But it means that the whole of the regulatory authorities have to become AI specialists. They have to create new systems to do that. So there's a whole training process that's going to take place as well.
Definitely. And this question of relationships, and Sarah, I will play that one to you. We had those events, as mentioned here, for a couple of years. So one of the big subjects in 2021, in this May Davos, was about the hybrid and new working models. Then we were talking a lot about companies being net zero. Then we talked a lot about social capital. Now we talk about AI. And let's say some of them are, are not necessarily here to stay. So how do you see this integration of AI from the strategic perspective, and how does it change the relationships within the organizations?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we are looking at AI as a moment in time, and we're forgetting that we're on a continuum of time, right? So we have been building up data and digital capability within our organizations for over 30 years. We've come through now, we're on our third internet revolution, and there's so much potential with something like AI to transform and the way we think about the data that we've accumulated in our organizations. When you think about how much of it is siloed, it's not available to you. You don't know maybe what somebody across, you know, the hallway from you is doing. This is an opportunity to really help you connect the dots within a very complex working system, and I would imagine the same is happening in newsrooms. And so that piece where AI can really help to accentuate and help you find hidden gems and hidden pieces of information within your organization is incredibly powerful. I would say, though, somebody who is responsible for the implementation of AI within our institution is, and I've been on this journey now for 3 years, is out of the box, it's not necessarily that great. It's not good at, you know, doing specialized tasks and doing the information seeking and you know, and understanding and comprehending the intent of what you're trying to do. And this is where agentic AI is now a huge leap forward for us. But again, agentic AI is now becoming another catch-all term. You know, we've got knowledge agentic AI, we've got automated and autonomous agentic AI, and we've got agentic AI systems, right? Where one agent might be passing off to another. And so in order to really capitalize on this massive leap forward in technology is you need to actually have focus within your organization. I know I've strayed off the relationship question, but you need to have focus within your organization so that you can utilize AI in a way that is actually going to help you use it more accurately. And this requires information graphs, it requires you using more complex AI systems to support the truth and the veracity of what you need. So we in our institution are utilizing AI. We're a very global university to really help with the connectivity and to help know what everybody's doing and to really work on de-siloing our institution so that we can be better at the work we do with, you know, our learners and our clients.
Thank you. So, Michelle, do you want to react on this media organization of the future?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we when you talk about the future innovation, things seem to be very different, and better and faster. But I mean, going back to the basics for us, at least in trusted quality journalism, it is based on a journalist's job is based on clear editorial standards. It's based on public accountability. It's based on editorial independence. And if you are operating in the public information space of what, on things, on really important, from, of course, you could go from trivial information, but to very important information, such as the one that Greg was mentioning, that has an impact on, how elections go, or if you're going to get vaccinated or not, then you have to play by the rules. I think the study that I presented clearly shows that there's a problem and gives evidence of that problem. And what we simply want to do is not to even worsen misinformation. So, it's not about, of course, AI is great and AI will evolve itself and it's going to help us do so many things in terms of creativity, content production, speeding admin processes. But when you are in the information space, you need to respect certain rules. And so once you have that clarity of the problem outlined in, for example, in our research, and we're not the only ones that have highlighted flaws in the system, then you have to, create a level playing game with certain rules. And these rules need to be implemented, for example, in terms of transparency. So transparency shouldn't just be kind of an afterthought, but transparency needs to be embedded in the process of, creating very much these systems. Again, as I said beforehand, so that it is a win-win for all, because ultimately, our companies ourselves, our media companies, have huge data sets of trusted data that these companies could train their LLMs with. So it could be a win-win for all. But again, we need to work together. So it is something that ultimately I think it's really going to be important for, for our democracies, really. Because if you do not provide, trusted information, that will have an impact on how people will vote. That will have an impact on how, how our youngsters, how, our kids, for those who have them, will actually see the world and make their decisions. So it seems sometimes could seem a minor issue, but it has, for me, an impact on the foundations of our own democracies.
On that statement, it's difficult to follow up. So I will try to ask Greg. From your perspective, you are leading a trade organization, a non-profit as well. How does technology and AI change your job and the subjects you need to be dealing with on the daily basis? Because at least my observation, talking with multiple trade associations, actually, that the subjects that Michelle is evoking, so the democracy, and that element becomes even more important from the perspective of any industry that needs to operate in the system, and that really changes the job of everyone, including the trade associations. But how does it translate in your industry?
Okay, I think I'm going to try and make a distinction a bit between the AI platforms, which let's call it information for the public, and then AI platforms that we're using more internally. For example, certainly in the pharmaceutical area, AI is really important for research. But basically, the AI is being handled and dealt with by people who are specialists. Yeah? So they think in a certain way. They're thinking on the sourcing way, for example. And I think also, AI is a very great tool, and I'm sure many of you have this, in your daily work functions. So we use AI quite a lot. But again, I think it's to do with the user. We're asking questions. AI is only almost as good as the questions you answer. That's one side. And it's being used everywhere, yeah? I think the information side to the public is the area that worries me most. Yeah, because this is and you know, in health, because we know it, there is a lot of misinformation. I mean, this should really be complementary to evidence-based information, which is out there, which is provided by, you know, reliable sources. Yeah, and that's how our information externally should be. I want to come back to the first one. Here's a really good example of, you know, digital health. Yeah, because actually we talked about digital, then it goes to AI. I mean, we have a company that specializes in tobacco cessation. And we presented this at the WHA, World Health Assembly. And they provide, in addition to their product, yeah, which you can spray or patch, they actually provide AI platform or digital platform that enables the person who is trying to you know, stop smoking, yeah, through a series of help through the digital application, giving you daily prompts, giving you a schedule or whatever. This is a brilliant example of the use of AI, and we're going to see a lot of this in the health area, particularly in the self-care health area. What worries me is I think what we're talking about is the use for information for the public, which is not properly regulated. And coming back to democracies, I'll put it here, we have companies that don't want to be regulated. That's why they don't like certain parts of the EU, because the EU wants to regulate in order to protect the people, and other companies don't want that. And that, I think, is the big challenge that we have now.
And Sarah, IMD is known for anticipating the future trends in the future. So what would you say comes next, and how do you see the developments or anticipate developments between the AI adoptions within the strategic business community?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're definitely seeing is, like I was saying before, the level of sophistication is just going up and up. And this is where technology and data and AI is now becoming core skills, regardless of which department, what function you might be sitting in within an organization. And so we're seeing a lot more of organizations that are more skills and capability based and less so about roles, and have a lot more agility and flexibility, and which they're seeing is allowing them to be a lot more future proof. The other thing that we're seeing is the ability to take in massive amounts of trusted data sources from external sources and really help with guiding really discrete strategic decisions. You know, so there's new companies, new AI firms that are really able to provide a lot of information about the entire cross-section of decision-making that a leader needs to make. So there's much more to share, but these would be two of probably the biggest trends off the top of my head.
Okay. Definitely, thank you. And just as we are coming to wrapping up and opening for the questions, really, I will ask all of you the same question. You know, Michelle, in a way, what keeps you awake at night when it comes to the future of public service media and in the context of technology, and what gives you the biggest hope right now?
Keeps me awake at night, who will win the next Eurovision Song Contest?
Okay.
I think it's, you know, I think we all mentioned things moving very fast and speed. And the organizations the EBU represent are reinventing themselves, of course, but maybe not at the right speed, because again, we are competing not against the commercials or the publishers anymore, as it was in the 80s. You know, we are competing against the big tech giants that are moving very, very fast and are thinking in a global way. So I think the big challenge for us will be in this AI tech revolution, digital revolution, the speed at which we can reinvent ourselves, staying very much true to our values. So again, going where the others can't go, continuing to create good, trusted journalism, continue to provide, you know, local stories, continue to do cross-border collaboration, and so on and so forth. So it is the speed at which we can reinvent and adapt ourselves. But let me say that at the same time, I think, yes, that's a challenge, but there is a great opportunity. Greg was mentioning COVID. It might have been, an opportunity for, your industry to see things in a different way. Definitely, these volatile times are an opportunity, I think, to speak loud and clear about public service journalism. That is our sweet spot. That is our differentiation. That is our bread and butter. That is what my industry does. And I think that is needed now more than ever.
Thank you. Sarah?
I think for me, it's really trust and ethics and thinking about how we frame a new era of ethical leadership. And I think now more than ever, not leaving this in the hands of the technologists, but really embracing this at the society level. I think for too long, we've let the technology companies, and I am a technologist, sort of define this space on their own. And I think that this is a place where we really need to be working together on defining, is it okay that AI is, probably going to replace the vast majority of entry-level jobs? Well, what does that mean when you've got, a full, life of a career and those, initial skills that you gain get scaffolded upon and you build into more complex skills over time? We need to think about what that means for those who are, in their early 20s and entering those first careers. We need to think about the fact that trust is not equal. Trust in AI. Women trust it a lot less than men do. And that's, potentially going to hold them back for what their future careers could look like. Trust is also not equal across countries. China, Thailand, et cetera, they tend to trust AI a heck of a lot more than those of us in Europe and even the United States. So this is a really nuanced field. It's a nuanced transformation. I think we also need to be careful not to make the mistake of looking in our rearview mirror to try to predict what's going to happen in the future. This technology is incredibly different, and it's going to transform us in really, really novel ways that are going to be very unexpected. And I think we have a responsibility to say yes or no, and to also be able to put on the brakes when we need to.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Greg?
Okay, so what keeps me up at night is what's keeping my son up at night, which is using this and going on TikTok. Yeah? Some of it's good, a lot of it's not. And I think it's worth mentioning here, we talk about health, mental health. This is a big issue. And again, it's about the users. It's about regulation. I think we have amazing opportunity with AI, amazing. Yeah, but we've just got to get it right. Yeah, and some of the moves that have been made to regulate access to social media for youngsters. I speak for myself, not my organization. I'm totally in favor of it and glad to see it, because I think sometimes parents of teenagers now, this generation of parents, are powerless. They need help through regulation and other people to intervene. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, I really do see some amazing opportunities. So I could be quite positive. I'm listening a lot recently about whether this is going to knock out, opportunities for first-time, career areas. I don't know. I'm wondering if they just adapt to using AI as part of their entry level into a career. I can see that happening, but we've got to get it right.
And can I just add to that what you just said, Greg? Because I think just learning on what you said on social media platforms, I think on AI, we have an opportunity, and we were talking about it with Sarah, just around literacy, media literacy. Just for, I understand the bans when you get to a point where you can't do anything else. But here, we have an opportunity to actually teach, youngsters to say, well, this is a distorted context, or, this is what it means to have a proper transparent source. So I think media literacy, we should be investing heavily in that to inform and train and educate basically the next generation. Ourselves too, actually. Why not?
Yeah. All right. Right, well, on that note, let's open to some questions from the floor. So you know the rules, just state your name and organization you represent, and then you will get the mic. So gentleman in the front was the fastest one, and then afterwards, gentleman just with the second microphone. Please go ahead.
My name is Lars Bjørn. I'm CEO of an energy group in Denmark. I'm really missing media, critical media. I'm very much looking at you because when we talk about trust, it's a moral issue, and it's not AI cannot be a moral issue. AI is just a tool. And the strange thing is, if I told somebody that an apple can fly, told it to a reporter, they would either call me stupid or humorous in a context. They would never call me intelligent. But you're repeating that story. It's intelligence we're talking about. If I systematically tell wrong things to a reporter, they would write about me that I'm a liar. You don't. You write about it's a system that needs improvement. So media, what I'm trying to say is media is really too soft on this, and you're not looking on the one who has the moral responsibility, which is the one who is creating these systems and systematically spreading misinformation. And those people, I mean, they are just putting a system, AI, in between us and protecting themselves and saying, hey, this is new technology, but they are harming society. And they should be on the front page every day for all the wrong stuff they are doing, because they're doing bad. And it's not about, medical and other uses. Of course we should use AI. It's just mathematics. It's nothing else.
All right, I guess it's more a comment than a question, but I don't know if you want to react, Michelle.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think it's a great comment. And we've touched upon the fact, or I maybe mentioned earlier, when you enter in the information space, as you say, there is the value of that information and the value of journalism, and that's, what we do. And there needs to be a level playing field, and everybody needs to play by the rules. If you are creating content, public information in that space. So we need regulation. We have regulation on a European level. We have regulation around pluralism, around transparency. The EU has an AI Act. The problem is the enforcement of that regulation. And so I don't think regulation hinders innovation. I just think it's a question of let's please apply that regulation and enforce it also in courts on a national level. We know that, it is now just a bigger issue of media. EU-US trade deals are, interrupting some of those discussions, let's say. But it is a big issue that Europe has, which we need to, really get to the implementation of some of that, because we are creating a very different level playing field. As I was saying before, you have in your country Denmark Radio, who needs to be accountable to its citizens, who is, regularly under attack for anything it publishes or puts up. I don't think it's the same situation vis-a-vis, these AI assistants and big tech. Why are there different rules? We are all operating in the public information space. So I think it's getting, again, not that they shouldn't be operating, but playing by the rules that everybody else is.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. I'm Nick Gowing. I used to be a main presenter at the BBC. I worked with Liz Corbyn for many years. I was involved with making the announcement of Diana's death, for example, almost 30 years ago, and also 9/11 and many events like that. What you're talking about here is very, very brutal in terms of information. I mean, I've sat in a presenter's desk for many, many years wondering, is this really correct? And my question, therefore, goes along the following line. Are you convinced that you will ever be able to intervene when those who've got malicious intent are determined to get that stuff out there? Because I have a suspicion that even with the best AI, this will not be possible. I mean, I used to work for an organization, I left it 10 years ago, which is now facing a legal action by President Trump for $10 billion. The same thing can happen in the information space as well, of real-time information which is getting out there, which is being put out there with a degree of determination to deceive. And I say that because I've been in many situations on air where I've said, even to my colleagues, are you sure this is right? And I'm not sure that AI can yet distinguish between what is wrong and what is right. The night that Diana died, we had people phoning us from Paris. This was before the age of iPhones. People phoning us saying they'd seen a woman walk away from the wreckage. There are people out there who are determined to deceive and bring reputational damage to large organizations and small organizations. It's becoming big business, particularly in climate, biodiversity, and nature. So my question is about whether you think you will ever be able to intervene in those few seconds between the stuff coming in and it going to air. Because I have a feeling that that's a very, very vulnerable situation to be in, because you can't ever get there.
Look, I think that, and thank you for your comment, I think at the speed of light that the information is going, and you know better than me, no. I mean, misinformation, there will still be misinformation, false information, misleading information. But this does not prevent us of still, working on systems, exactly what I was saying before, with when we have facts in and facts out. So we need to push the industry. And we as public service media organizations, and you know better than me, the BBC, we have to really be at the forefront of that change. Misinformation has always existed and will always continue to exist, now even faster than before. But we need to push the industry to work all together. Ultimately, as I said earlier, it can be, good business even for them. And we need to be able to work together. Will that, change all the problems around misinformation? No. But I think that should not hinder us for not trying and for not, entering in a proper dialogue with these companies and pushing the European Commission and the EU institutions to enforce that legislation on a European and our regulators on a national level.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you very much. Uwe Bölke, board member for production companies. To be fair, I also don't have a question, more a comment. And thinking about the problems which we are faced, and I confirm everything, Mega Tickmark, what you have spoken about, I wonder what is the difference today compared to that when I was educated. And I grew up in the times where you only had 3 channels of television. And we had a lack of information. And our parents educated us to connect the dots. So not an over information, but you hear something and there something, and you had some kind of logic. Does it work? So to your question, what keeps me up at night is when artificial intelligence meets natural stupidity. So what you expect, what you spoke about, that you are without any critical thinking adapting information. That is where we are frightened speaking to our kids, and that is what we have to do. And I'm not believing that regulation will clear that. In the end, it's education of us as parents.
Right? Would you like?
Well, I was going to say that I think exactly what you're talking about there is what's going to make people more competitive in their roles. It's going to be those, those purely and truly human skills that really give us the edge. That ability to have critical thinking, that ability to look wider, the ability to interrogate these models on, to help you check your own blind spots and to find new information that you maybe didn't think about before. I do think that, and with respect to like the question of relationships and thinking about business models, there's an opportunity to really, crack open the doors and have a longer lasting relationship if you can build trust in that kind of AI connection between you and those you serve. So again, somebody who works with this technology, who's really, really deep into the nuance of it, as long as you move beyond the large language models, which to me are McDonald's, you can get into more of that kind of fine dining, truthfulness, using better techniques and things you can actually trust. So that's what I think you're going to be seeing, especially in media companies in this coming year or two, is that you're going to get more sophisticated in how you build and also how you deploy and utilize this within what you're creating in the media space, for sure.
Be very quick. I think one of the issues on news is I was surprised only 15% actually of under 25s were using AI to gain their news. I would have thought it would be a lot more. I expect it will be a lot more. I think a lot of people are not watching.
That's 2024, 2025.
Ah, well, that'd be interesting.
I still don't have the. I mean, it's not our report; it's the Reuters Institute report. So it's going to be interesting to see how it jumps.
Yeah, and of course there are a lot of people that are not using mainstream news now to get their news and information. I mean, that's the other thing, and that's, people don't have that sense of accountability that you're talking about. So we've entered a new world, and there are new platforms to get more misinformation out. The only thing I try to get my head around, there's opinion. So, even when we didn't have all this, taking a UK perspective, you'd have opinion from The Sun and the Daily Telegraph will be very different from the opinion of the Observer and the Guardian. But I don't think everyone was in the same issue about, this is all misinformation. Depends where you come from. What I'm saying, there's still going to be opinion. So that's it. But just coming back to the thing about, which really does keep me up at night, is the access to this information by younger people. And also, it has to be said, look, let's put it on the ground. We're pretty well-educated people in this room, yeah? Not everybody has had that sort of education. We don't have a trade union movement that probably provides people also with a form of information and education. That's gone. So there are people out there that do not have access to the critical thinking that we would assume that we have. And this is where I find that the user aspect is really important. It comes back to what you're saying. Somehow, we're going to have to train people to be more critical thinkers. I think we can do it. The health is a special area. We probably can use various doctors, pharmacists, systems to ask people to be critical thinkers in health. Outside of that, it's going to be very difficult, but I'm not saying it's impossible. But I think this is the main thing, but it really does worry me. Yeah.
Yeah, and just going back to exactly what you were saying, I think it's that critical education. It's really, again, there's not, going back also to the question of the gentleman from the BBC, I mean, there's no one perfect solution. It's a mix of education, regulation, dialogue, and I think especially for the younger generation, I mean, sourcing, we're saying sourcing is so important, because, we grew up and we were educated recognizing good sources from less good sources. But nowadays, when younger generations consume news, they don't look at brands. I mean, they get everything from YouTube. So again, their brand is YouTube, but there'll be BBC content on YouTube now more than ever, but will they recognize it's BBC? Probably not. They'll keep, that it's YouTube. So again, that education, I guess, if we should, do a list of what's the most important, actually it is that education, it's that media literacy that we really would need to invest in.
I am going to disagree slightly. So I've got 4 kids, a 17-year-old son who's a big YouTuber consumer, and he does follow influencers that he trusts. And he is getting his information from these people, and there are others, and he's become very savvy in this space. And one thing we've done, my husband and I, is Friday nights we do YouTube DJ, and we're just like, Luke, what have you watched this week? Show us all and we're learning so much about what he's exposed to. He's watching things on politics, on the environment, on technology. And it is a lot deeper than I even thought. I just thought YouTube was this big catch-all of kind of a little bit of garbage. And it's not true at all. These are now people that I also am following. It's really fascinating.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the news sources are the influencers. And that, you know, again, for us, it's the New York Times, you know, it's the BBC, you know, I don't know, it's the Frankfurt Allgemeine. I don't know if you're based in Germany or wherever you're based, Switzerland. Okay, it's NZZ. So it's the influencers, and that's where, you know, we need to quickly move also, I understand, in that space. So it's finding those new sources that the younger generation relates to.
Perfect, thank you. I think we have time for one very short question or extremely short comment. Charlotte, there was someone? Yes?
Sure, yeah. Hello, I am Jonathan Stassen with a group called Celebrate Collective, a fellow technologist. And I'm wondering, these AI models aren't obviously going to go away. And to create better answers from them, I'm wondering if it's reasonable to create a pipeline from reputable news organizations to these models so that they can be better sourced. I know that that would create some very interesting economics, you know, with what those agreements look like. But do you see that either helping or not helping, or is that conceding? I'd be curious your thoughts.
I mean, I can tell you it will help. Context is king or queen, and being able to have trusted sources of information to train your models is the absolute best way that you're going to have AI that you can trust, without a doubt. And so there are a lot of technology platforms that allow you to do this now, even moving into more smaller language models so that they have a better environmental footprint. And so to answer your question simply, absolutely. You need that context, and you need a corpus that you can trust.
So we've at the EBU have our own LLM, which we call Neo, but we also sell it as a service to our members. So for example, if you go on probably, I don't know if you speak Swedish, but if you go on the Swedish radio website, you will have a chatbot, and that you can ask them anything about, you know, summarizing what did Trump do or say in the last 2 days in Davos. And again, they will source information from their database, their newsrooms and their news database, and from databases of selected public service media organizations where they think, again, there is trusted content. So creating an AI assistant with trusted news. So that's what we're doing already in our environment. But, you know, again, going back to what I was saying about dialogue and cooperation, because here it's not that we want to kill AI, it's how can we cooperate to create a better news environment for everybody, because we have big data sets with trusted information. So how could we cooperate with these companies to create good business for all?
Perfect, thank you. I see that we have to finish the questions, so I will have a difficult job to summarize this rich discussion, but I was taking some notes. So, you know, I think there are a couple of things that definitely come out of it. I think the first one is, and everyone was talking about the speed of innovation, the acceleration, the speed of news, the speed of information, so that's definitely something that we'll be seeing more of. The second one is the silos, and that technology is forcing us to break those silos, because if we are to be effective, we need to break them and rethink what our models are. The third one is sophistication. You see, I start with S, everything. More sophistication of the business models and more sophistication also of the usages, because if we get sophisticated, that's when we really get the value, because technology is as smart as what we put in, that is what we get out of it, and then being sophisticated and strategic about it becomes really paramount. The fourth one is synchronization on the regulatory front, and also alignment between the different stakeholders and like alignment between the different geographies, because at the end of the day we are addressing things that are global, but oftentimes from the very local perspective, so synchronization will become paramount. And the fifth one is sourcing. So we need to, and that goes to the literacy and to how we are actually building the source of information and building that into the culture, both in the corporate side, going down to the individuals, and then obviously YouTube DJ. That's the main takeaway. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us, and thanks for the panel. Thank you, Michelle, Sarah, Greg, and we stay here in the room for short networking. Thanks a lot. Thank you.